Look at any motocross engine built before 2010 and you'll see the same layout. Exhaust exits the front of the cylinder, intake feeds from the rear. Then Yamaha looked at that consensus and did the opposite. The 2010 YZ450 came out with the intake in the front and the exhaust routed out the rear. Before Yamaha pulled this off, one other brand tried it and it went badly. The 2001 Cannondale MX450 was the first modern motocross bike to run a reversed cylinder layout. It was overweight, hard to start, unreliable, and ultimately took the company down with it. Cannondale filed for bankruptcy in 2003 after burning through $80 million on its motorsports program. The concept was right. The execution was a disaster. What that failure proved wasn't that the reversed engine was a bad idea. It proved it was an idea that needed a manufacturer with the engineering depth to actually deliver it. Yamaha spent almost 3 years developing the 2010 YZ450 through an internal group called the YZ Research Team, pulling members from engineering, product planning, testing, and design across both their US and Japanese operations. Crucially, this group operated after hours. It wasn't an official sanctioned project at first. It took sustained pushing from inside that team just to get top management to approve it, because it was that far outside standard process. When they finally got the green light, their stated goal was to produce something as revolutionary as the original 1998 YZ400. The bike that single-handedly proved 4 strokes could compete with 2 strokes and change motocross forever. That's the bar they set for themselves. Why the traditional layout existed in the first place. In a conventional 4-stroke MX engine, the exhaust port faces forward, toward the front wheel and radiators, and the intake port faces rearward, pulling air from an airbox tucked behind and above the cylinder. This made sense early on because it kept the exhaust header short, gave the airbox a clean high position, and followed the natural lean angle of the cylinder. It worked. Generations of bikes proved it, but working isn't the same as optimal, and Yamaha went looking for the ceiling. The airflow problem nobody was talking about. Here's what the traditional layout forces you to do. The intake tract has to curve. Air enters the airbox from above, bends down and forward, snakes around the cylinder, and enters the rear-facing intake port. Every bend in that path is turbulence. Turbulence is resistance. Resistance is lost power. Engineers compensated with bigger carbs, longer velocity stacks, careful port geometry, but they were always working around a bent road. Flip the cylinder head and the intake now faces the front of the bike. Yamaha redesigned the airbox to sit at the front of the machine, feeding air straight down into the intake. The path is shorter, it's straighter. Air hits the intake with less turbulence, fills the cylinder more completely on every intake stroke, that's volumetric efficiency, and you get more air in without adding displacement or boost. More air means more fuel burned, means more power, cleanly. There's an additional bonus that riders noticed immediately. The airbox at the front is shielded by the shrouds, which curve much further around their leading edge than on any previous YZ. Rear wheel roost, the thing that destroys traditional rear-mounted airboxes over a long moto, can no longer reach the filter. The filter itself also got simpler. A single flat foam piece instead of the multi-section, glued construction that previous YZs used, which had a habit of delaminating during cleaning. Maintenance got faster and more reliable in the same redesign. The exhaust side solves a different problem entirely. With the exhaust now exiting the rear of the engine, Yamaha routed the header pipe under the seat using what they called a tornado design. A coiled header that loops around itself to build the pipe length needed for proper exhaust scavenging, low-to-mid power, and exhaust pulse timing before feeding into a large muffler. That sounds like a packaging headache. It's actually a mass centralization win. On a traditional bike, the exhaust system runs the full length of the machine. Header from the front of the engine, pipe along the right side, canister somewhere near the rear axle. That's a long, heavy component hanging wide and low along the bike's flank. Mass at the perimeter of the chassis increases rotational inertia. The bike resists direction changes. It wants to go straight when you need it to pivot. The reversed layout pulls the heaviest part of the exhaust system back toward the center of the bike, tightening everything between the axles. Less mass at the extremities means the bike rotates faster through corners and transitions. That's not a feeling riders imagined. It's a measurable moment of inertia reduction. Yamaha specifically described the goal as concentrating inertial mass toward the center of the machine, and the YZ450 immediately became known for a flickability that previous 450s couldn't match. Their own engineers said it handled closer to a 252-stroke than any prior 450 had managed. The frame had to be reinvented too, and it nearly broke the budget. The reversed engine didn't just change where parts sat, it forced a complete chassis redesign. Yamaha moved from a single backbone frame to what they called a bilateral beam design. twin extruded aluminum beams that are hydroformed into a unique double S-bend shape, one bend in each plane. This gave them the precise flex characteristics they wanted while accommodating the new engine and airbox positions. The cylinder itself was tilted 8.2 degrees rearward, notable because the 2009 YZ450 had its cylinder tilted 4.5 degrees forward, meaning the total shift from one generation to the next was 12.7 degrees. Nothing on the bike carried over from the year before, except the rear brake cable. That bilateral beam frame was so complex to manufacture that according to the engineers involved, each prototype cost approximately the price of a large car. They went through a significant number of those prototypes during development. That's the scale of investment Yamaha absorbed before a single production bike reached a dealer. The cooling bonus nobody asked for. Traditional engines blast exhaust heat forward, directly at the radiators. Your cooling system is fighting the engine's own waste heat on its front face. Yamaha's reversed layout routes hot exhaust gases backward and away. The radiators could now run larger and lower, filling the space where the exhaust pipe used to exit, and they see cleaner, cooler incoming air with no exhaust plume fighting them. The shock also gained more room and better ventilation around it, and its piggyback reservoir moved from alongside the damper, where it used to cook next to the exhaust, to on top, where heat soak is no longer a factor. In enduro or slow technical conditions where airflow is limited, this thermal separation is meaningful. Riders and mechanics who first saw the 2010 YZ450 were genuinely unsettled. The exhaust going out the back, the tornado header coiling under the frame, it violated pattern recognition built over decades of working on bikes. James Stewart was the factory face of the bike at launch, unveiling it to the world and immediately putting race laps on it. For a while, competitive results followed, but the broader paddock took time to convert, not because the bike was slow, but because nothing about it looked like what people expected a fast dirt bike to look like, and the wide-feeling chassis and loud intake note were constant talking points. By 2012, Stewart himself had left Yamaha mid-season, stating publicly that on the bike he was on, he simply couldn't win. That was a brutal moment for the platform, a generation-defining rider publicly walking away from it while it was still new. Yamaha didn't abandon the layout, they refined it. The 2014 YZ450 was a significant second-generation overhaul, narrower at the radiator wings, lower seat height, shorter wheelbase, and a new wraparound exhaust that replaced the original Tornado system and moved the silencer 7.5 inches closer to the center of the bike, further tightening mass centralization than even the original design had achieved. The airbox volume grew by 256%. The bike was getting progressively better, but the reputation still lagged. Then in 2018, Yamaha made a subtler but telling engineering adjustment. They changed the cylinder angle from 8.2 degrees rearward to 6.2 degrees, making it more upright, specifically to increase forward weight bias under braking, improve front-end bite entering corners, and address the one consistent complaint that had followed the platform for 8 years. That's not a brand abandoning a concept. That's a brand that understands it well enough to tune it precisely. In 2014, they also took the reversed layout downstream. The YZ250F, 4 years after the 450, got the same treatment: reversed cylinder, fuel injection, wraparound exhaust. Same principles, smaller package. The 250F silencer moved 7.5 inches closer to centerline compared to the outgoing model. Riders who'd been skeptical on the 450 felt the handling difference even more clearly on the lighter 250, where chassis agility matters most. The 250 class is where the reversed layout finally started converting the doubters in volume. Honda looked at it and chose not to copy it. Here's a detail that rarely gets talked about. According to reporting from Community Discussions citing a CRF head engineer interview, Honda's engineering team examined the reversed cylinder layout and developed a working version of the concept internally, and then chose not to put it into production, not because it didn't work but because adopting it after Yamaha would look like copying. That's the measure of how significantly Yamaha had staked out the territory. Honda, with all their resources, decided the reputational cost of following wasn't worth it, so they stayed with traditional layout and found other ways to compete. That's how completely one brand can own an idea. So why hasn't everyone copied it? More than 15 years after launch, Yamaha remains the only modern motocross manufacturer running a reversed cylinder engine. The answer is both simple and expensive. A brand can't flip the cylinder head on an existing platform. They'd need to redesign the airbox, frame, subframe, exhaust routing, radiator positioning, and swing arm clearance from a blank sheet. The tooling and validation cost alone is a 9-figure commitment, and the competing brands already have bikes winning championships with traditional layouts. Good enough is a powerful force in motorsport product development. What makes this especially sharp is that the YZ450 went on to achieve the #1 ranking in both market share and unit sales in America, the home of motocross, with the reversed layout in place. That vindication came slowly. Dylan Ferrandis won the 2021 AMA Outdoor 450 Motocross Championship on it. Eli Tomac, one of the best riders of his generation, moved to Yamaha for 2022 and said the decision was purely about performance. The platform that James Stewart walked away from in 2012 became the platform elite riders were specifically seeking out a decade later. What Yamaha actually changed. The reversed engine isn't important because it made the YZ450 faster in a straight line, though the airflow gains are real and documented. It's important because it proved that a half-century-old layout consensus was a convention, not a law. Cannondale showed the idea was possible. Yamaha showed it was executable, race-ready, durable enough to carry production bikes for over 15 years, and refined enough to keep improving season after season. Suzuki took a completely different path. No radical engineering statement, just a yellow bike that keeps ending up under the fastest riders in the world decade after decade, and nobody's fully explained why. That's the next video. Why champions keep choosing Suzuki. It's up right now.